Hello everyone. If you're on here, it should be because you're an ops person and you're looking at how you might use REDCap. So what I'll do is I'll just give you a quick overview of the whole system, and then I'll show you how you might be able to use it to build some reports to get a bit of oversight and have a look at what's going on. So basically what we've done is so we've designed a whole bunch of instruments to cover off some of the phases of case and contact management. And so we have expanded the current symptom checking that was previously done, so that before only people that were on a 14-day isolation period, so a defined isolation period, and that is contacts, could be symptom checked through REDCap. Now we've made it so that you can do both cases and contacts and people who are on who are continuously exposed. So basically, if the the case is still infectious, those household contacts could theoretically be monitored electronically, but also by us using REDCap to capture that information. The other things that we've done is just match the case report, the scoping form. So there we've just merged the current timeline form and the case report form, and so it should be in a bit of a better order so that it can support interviewing, so it's a little bit more logical in actually how you would conduct the interview. And so we've matched what Anne had done for her DCP form, and it should be relatively similar to that. We've also, you'll see down here, created a bit to do with institutions, and I'll explain that a little bit more in detail a little bit later, and some, particularly for residential care, we've done some symptom checking forms so that you would be able to symptom check a unit in an aged residential care facility or a prison. And that's basically it. So if we start off at the beginning of the process, so what would happen is that once we got notified, so we'd be obviously notified the same way, it'd come through every serve, SSOs would still be required to go through and update all the demographic information and create an NDCMS record. And so what Richard Porch has done is created an automatic upload, so every hour it is that the NDCMS records are updated and uploaded into REDCap. So all new contacts and cases would go into there. Everyone would be put into this form. So what would happen is they would be plunked into REDCap and they would come into this record. So if we just pretend that this is our new person, they'll be plunked into something that looks like this. And so before I even show you anything, I just want to emphasize that the point of this initial form is that it's not for anyone to collect any information. It's more as a driver for how they will progress through the system or through different pathways. So if we just think about this form as basically deciding whether they're a case or a contact, and also for collecting some other key information. So like the demographic information is in here. So if at any time that's updated, it's updated in another instrument. So say the scoping form, the case, the contact tracing form, it comes back into this form and is updated. So we've got a sort of a central location to pull that information from when we need to. So all this information should be, or as much as possible, should be populated based on what was in NDCMS. We've got a few things that may not be, but that's okay. That will be updated later on. So things like the underlying conditions probably wouldn't get pulled through. But whether they're a case or a contact, or we've got here a res case and res contact, should be filled out. And so this basically decides whether they get whether they progress to scoping or contact tracing. And we've also got some other variables in here. So this is all just for your information only. That Richard would be using to kind of give us a few indicators that we can work off. So for example, last date of exposure or days since last exposure, and the exposure type, all those kind of things, which you can do a little bit more reporting out. It's got these keys, and these are probably one of the most important things about this form, is that it's pulling all the NDCMS keys. And so we're really using NDCMS to drive and link the cases and contacts in that way. So what would happen in theory is that all this information, or some of it, will be populated once a case is notified, and then that will inform what happens next. So if we just pretend that this is our person. So one other thing that we have to remember is that each person, so each case or contact that gets uploaded into REDCap is assigned a unique record ID. And so if we click on this here where it says record ID 1, we can see that once it's loaded, that these are all the forms that are available to that person. So these are all the instruments that we have available. And so you could go through scoping, you could go through the case report form, contact tracing, anything. These are all related to this one individual. And you can have a bulk view, which you can see on the record source dashboard. So every single row here is associated with one case or contact. Cool. So if we just pretend for this example that we're going to stick with record ID 1. And we're pretending that this person is a case. They will be sent, so as soon as the information in the initial survey is populated, it'll come up with what team they're assigned to, and their email address. So the interviewer would get emailed a link to say, you've got this case, can you please complete this survey for us? So another thing to note about this is that for scoping, it's okay if they complete it as a survey link, but for some other things, it's much better if people are having direct access to REDCap, so they're filling it in actually on REDCap. But for argument's sake, we'll just fill it in on REDCap. So we'll just pretend that this hasn't been filled out. So these are all the variables that we have available. So at the top, you'll see it's pulling through some of the demographic information from that previous initial form. And you can see what form it is at the top here by looking at the event name, so it's scoping, so we know that we're in the scoping phase. So if somebody, once a new case came through, the team's going to get sent an email. It'll contain a link to this form. It'll look a little bit different, so they can complete it there, or they can come into REDCap and complete it like this. And it's got all this information here, so you would go through and complete out all the interview details. You can go through and tick through all the boxes. Another important thing is when somebody's filling this out, that because we're always pulling from that initial form, we have some areas where we can't get those responses from the initial form to pipe through, to come through and pre-populate here. So what actually happens is, so this person's already completed this form, but it will come up like this, and the person will be required to confirm their name by either copying and pasting it, so they can confirm it when they're doing the interview. Or they can type out a new one, so it's just an extra quality control, so that if it is incorrect or spelled incorrect, then we can update it here, and that will go back once this is completed and update that initial form. So they always, if something's in blue here, it's always that you have to confirm it over here as well by actually physically populating that variable. So if you scroll through, you'll be able to see that pretty much everything is exactly the same as the current timeline and case report form. The only difference is that it's all mushed in together. I have added in a few questions around PPE and just the location and things, so we can pull that out if we need to. But you'll see all this, so whether they were symptomatic, whether they were hospitalised, that all comes from the case report form, so it should all be relatively familiar. The only difference is we've put some, REDCap has functionality which is known as branching logic. So that means that you can have questions popped up or hidden depending on the answers that you give. So if we said that the case was not asymptomatic, so they were symptomatic, so that's a hangover from the case report form, then all these options will pop up and you'll be able to specifically go through and tick through what options they had. You can make comments. So that's the branching logic working there. But if you said that yes, they were symptomatic, then it will pop. It will get rid of all of that. Some important things to note here in the scoping aspect is that because we've got cases that will potentially be symptom checked electronically, we have to have a way of building in some logic to say that for it to flag up when they're potentially going to be cleared. So we've just had to add in this question here about the date that the swab was taken. So if they were asymptomatic, it's very important that that's populated. So you can put it in today. You can click on the little calendar and it'll come up with one. So that is basically there to say that later on, if we want to clear someone, that it's 10 days from last positive swab. We've also got these timelines. So this first one is about the incubation period or the potential exposures of the case to COVID-19. So you would go through and fill all that out. So it's got 14 note boxes and you can say what they did on each day. And then we've got all this stuff, which again is from the case report form. Here it asks how many days has it been since the case was onset date. Anywhere where it's got a little line like that is because it's pulling from somewhere else. So it's blank there because the onset date is not available because they were asymptomatic. So if we said yes, that they were asymptomatic, and we put date and time of onset in there, it will pop up down here. See, that's populated now, and we'll be able to count the amount of days that they've been infectious. So that we'll be able to, once we do that, it'll come up with 8 activity days for what they've been up to since their onset date. So it's been 8 days since their onset date, so you just put 8. If it had only been 2, then it will pop up with only 2 after their onset date. So that's just the timeline to understand what's happened while they've been infectious. So here we've got household context. So another important thing to note here is that Richard's put in we've got some background things working along here so that all these contacts, once they're listed in here, will be exported and popped into a spreadsheet, and they should already be controlled in terms of how that gets entered into NDCMS with the contact group. So from here, it'll know that these people are household contacts. So that's good. So all household contacts will be pulled in and they will be all assigned to the same group. You can have anywhere up to 15 household contacts. So every time you add another household contact, you put yes, another one will pop up. So that's all good. And then other contacts. So in here, the idea is that you would collect any information on contacts. So my main example here would be if they'd been out to dinner with somebody and been infectious while they're at dinner, you would add those contacts in here. Any other contacts that are associated with an institution, so for example, a aged care facility, a school, a workplace, you wouldn't fill in here. You would leave them for later, and I think this is normal process anyway, but you would wait until you've got in contact with the actual institution, and you would be requesting those contacts directly from here. You could still, if it was like a smaller exposure and it didn't quite fit that you were going to go directly to the institution, you can still enter them in here, that's fine. But you will be asked questions around the contact group, so it'll ask you things, and these have been copied directly from NCTS to try and match them, but what the options are, the date and time of exposure, and yeah. So from there, all these would be pulled out into a spreadsheet and they would be formatted so that anyone who had selected that the contact groups were the same, they'll be pulled into the same contact group into everything. A really important thing here in terms of data quality is that they're entering, if they are having, say, 5 people at a dinner party and other, type dinner, and obviously they're filling this out in the same way that they normally would, so it would be the restaurant names and things like that. This date and time of exposure has to be exactly the same across all the people in that contact group. So every time they do that, it'll have to be the same. It's always, a problem is that it always comes up with this other contact 50 and they can't get rid of it. It's just a bug in the system, which is super annoying. But it's basically that we have a maximum of 50 other contacts, so outside of household contacts and outside of institutional contacts that can be captured in this form. And once they'd finished populating all the other contacts, they would just pop down the number. So it should be really easy. They should just be able to scroll up and see what the number is up on their last one and pop that in there. And that is just going to be used to prepare reports so that we know how many contacts those people have. Now this is the institution section. So in here, it's got a lot of branching logic working away here, which is based on, you can tick at any amount of institutions in here. So if they say went to a secondary school, then you would just get the information around that and the class timetable. And once you tick yes to any of these actual institutions, so not no institution, it will then trigger an invite to be sent later on, and I'll talk about that a little bit later to a different source. So yeah, we've got a whole bunch of different types of institutional exposures that a person might have, and it'll just ask them for a little bit more information on that before going through, and then it's just got how we would do the contact group. And again, this is just a hangover from the case report form, so whether they were in isolation or whether you'd advise them to be in isolation. And welfare, so from here, if you tick yes to this question, then it will trigger a welfare application form to be sent to you to fill out on their behalf, and then you will be able to, once you tick complete the application, it will go directly to the welfare team. Just down here is another important component, so you would just be asked to take, based on how you've interacted with them before, and there's probably no exact science on how you do this, but it would just basically be based on a sense of how you got through the interview and what kind of their abilities were and whether they had access to the internet and things like that, whether they wanted to. Whether they were suitable to be electronically symptom checked. And so I'm picking probably, at the moment while things are a little bit quiet, touch wood, or quieter, you wouldn't want to electronically symptom check a case. We'd probably leave that kind of for a bit later until we were in a surge type situation. So you would probably take note of that anyway. And then this is just a follow-up email. So anytime that for the symptom checks to be sent through to the next day. Then you go through and complete the progress note as you normally would, and any outstanding action. So I've just populated that or created that field so that we can specifically mention exactly what you need to do from now on. So whether that's follow up with an institution, contact the household contacts, things like that. And then we can report directly on that. This again will be pre-populated based on the answers that are completed. They just haven't been completed yet. So that is scoping. And I guess before I go any further, one important thing for people who are filling out the forms is just to know that the difference between saving and marking surveys complete and saving and exiting a record. So you would only ever mark a survey as complete once you've fully finished the task. So if you got halfway through scoping and suddenly some other emergency situation came up and you had to stop halfway through for whatever reason, whether it's scoping or any other survey, you would always opt for a save and exit record. You're only ever going to mark as complete when the actual interview is complete. So if we save and mark as complete, it's going to come up with a warning because it's got a whole bunch of required fields that haven't been filled out. and so you technically can't complete it properly because you haven't actually completed all the required fields. So there's a couple in there that are designated as required fields. So that's just the data quality thing. But for now, I'll just do that. Oh my god, am I even recording? I'm recording, it's all good. Okay, now, so next, I'll just take you through the case report form. So this form is basically just what's been entered in scoping, and it pulls through all the information in the same order as the actual case report form, so it makes it a lot easier for someone, the SSOs, to complete all that. So it's all in the same order as the actual case report form, so it's just to make data actually a little bit easier for them. And then if we go to contact tracing, so same thing. So again here, if someone was listed in the initial survey as being a contact, then the case and contact management team would get an email to say, can you please complete this survey as contact tracing for this contact. So again, we've got all the demographic information at the top, so we can know who they are and give them a call. Again, we have to confirm their emails, their names by populating these fields, which somebody has already gone through and done. We go through and collect all the demographic information, same as usual, all the same as it usually would be if you were doing it in a paper form. It's just a little bit different now that we are in an electronic form. Then we've got all the symptoms, so you go through and ask them if they've got any symptoms, their onset date, whether they've got any underlying conditions, are they still feeling unwell now, then we will discuss that with the email each. And welfare application, so same rule again, with them being able to access welfare, they tick yes, and a welfare application form will be sent to them. So that's contact tracing. Cool, so that one we don't have to worry about that. But the welfare application, again, it's just the same as the actual welfare application. It's got the same fields and everything that the paper form does, but again, it's just the electronic form. So once somebody clicks complete on here, so they would say the mark survey is complete, all that information would populate into a referral form, which would be sent into the welfare team. So to the welfare team's generic email address. Now we've got all these institution forms, so there is a difference here where we've got the residential institution form and institution form. So the idea here is once you've identified in scoping that somebody has been infectious whilst in an institution, you're going to follow up with that institution and you're going to ask them a few questions. So if we just look at this institution form as an example, in this person's scoping, they've identified that they would have been infectious whilst at high school. So we would just go through and populate this information, get the principal contact person's email and name so that we know who we're following up with, write a bit of a progress note. And then once this form is completed, it will then send the person named here, so the principal, so say if it was actually at a high school, it would gather the email address and name from here, and it would send another form to them, so not to us, to them. So let's just pretend that we were doing a high school one. And it would send in a template spreadsheet. So they would be able to upload all the students associated with that case into this little guy here and the staff, and then any other information that we have. And so for here, if there's anything else that you guys want me to put in here, so if there's any plans that you need that would be standard across high schools or anything, I think in some other ones I've got a COVID plan where you press the COVID button. I can put that in as a field, that's no trouble. Just you know what you want. Cool, and so for each type of institution that we've named, so the ACEC, we've got residential, so that would be for parks and prisons, high school, other university accommodation, workplace. We've got a specific form for them, and then another form. So we think about them as a questionnaire for when you first interact with them, to let them know that there's been a case there, and to ask them a few other questions that you might have. And then the second one is just about actually requesting the data, so the actual contact information and any plans that you might need to review. So that's the distinction between those two forms. Cool. So then we go into the daily symptom check. So this is what they currently look like. So this is for an individual person. It's not for an institution. And we'll see here that when somebody, so if somebody elects to be on manual symptom checking, so that is that ARS is calling them each day, that the ARS person will come into here each day and complete a symptom check for them. They'll enter today's date, the date and time of first contact. So say I was calling somebody now, I'll say that contact attempt was unsuccessful, so it wasn't successful. And then I'll put my name in there, and I'll also put in what I did to try and contact them. So say I called them on the mobile number, and I left them a message. But again, so this contact attempt has been unsuccessful. So the symptom check for today has not been completed. So I'm going to mark it as, I'm going to save and exit the record. And when I do this, this little dot will come up as red in that person's dashboard. So I'm not going to do that now. So say that's done, and it's been an hour. I'm coming back to contact them again. I'm contacting them now. I'm going to say that it was a successful attempt, and my name again is Taylor. I'm going to ask them if they've been unwell. So say they have. It's got all the symptoms in there that I can list through, so I can directly say which symptoms they've got. Let's say they've got that, they've got that, and they've got that. Now, this is the exact same form that somebody would be completing if they were being electronically symptom checked, but these fields will be hidden. And so we've put a little bit of logic behind if they have symptoms of concern. So say this is a contact and they started having a cough, sore throat, and a fever, then we might think that that's possibly the case. Comes up in bright red, please contact your healthcare if you need it. And then have you accessed healthcare? Yes. If you had symptoms yesterday, are they worse today? No. How severe are your symptoms? Moderate. Have you had a swab? Let's say no. If you see no. So that's just lets us know whether they've actually gone and done that of their own volition, and were they admitted to hospital? No. Cool. You're also given the option to apply for welfare here too. So if I click yes, then again this welfare application form will pop up, and you need to go through and complete that. They can write comments, so that's for the actual contact or case to complete if they're doing self-completion. Otherwise, we would write a progress note in here, as we would normally. And then at the end of it, we're going to mark it as complete, because that symptom check has actually been completed. So this form has got 100 duplications of it. So, or replications, I should say. So somebody can theoretically be symptom checked for 100 days. It's a little bit annoying because we can't prioritize how we go further. So you have to scroll across here. And then we come to the residential symptom check. So they're all numbered, so you should be able to tell which one's which. Now, the idea behind this one is basically that somebody who is on the ground at a ARC or a prison would be able to symptom check a multitude of people, so a whole unit really. They could go around and have a survey on their phone, they could just tick off whether they've got symptoms or not. So here this is not coming up with anything because I haven't actually pre-populated the enrolment form. So I'll just find one that has been. Right, sorry about it. Sort of a bit of a technical difficulty. So this is one that's already been pre-populated. So in here, somebody would be able to go through and it would look a little bit different than the object photo. So this is what it would look like to like an HCA or a nurse who is going through their units to symptom check everyone. So it would come up with their name, date of birth, child when it's entered, and what unit they're in. So they'd be able to go through and say, yes, but this person's symptomatic today, what symptoms they've got, and then they can, if there's anything else that they want us to know about that person, they can write a little note in. So this person is actually the case, so they haven't been asked if they've been swabbed today, but this person here is the contact, so you'll be able to see that here. And so if they became symptomatic today, we might put in what symptoms they have. And then it will ask whether they've received a swab today. So if they say had a cough and a sore throat, and they thought that they were worthy of getting tested, then they might put yes, and then they just submit it, and we'll be able to see. So they might have 50 people on there, I don't know. And then they will be able to send that through to us, and we would have access to that directly through their record status dashboard. So we might go in here. So basically, all I've done is just complete that form in a survey form, which is how that person would be it. So that basically it. So if we wanted to see that one, I would go to record 25. We could have a look at what was reported through in here. If you wanted to look at it in this. Right, so here you'll see that this green dot's been completed. This is my record, so record 25. This is the whole dashboard again of all the cases and contacts that we've got in here. So if I could click on here, see it's got a green tick in it, so that means it's been completed. Oops, sorry, that's the wrong one. No. Right, so this is the symptom check that I just completed in the survey option. So if you wanted to look at a particular day's responses for a unit, you would come in here and you'd be able to see which resident it was, what symptoms they reported through, all that kind of jazz. But there also will be another way that we can do that too, which I'll get to later. So I think that's pretty much everything. Oh no, that's alive. We've got two other forms that we haven't gone through. So cool. So we've also, along with doing the residential symptom check, we've also, sorry, apologies, I left it all the way through here, created an update tool. So this is something that we have discussed with some case and contact management people around if, say, an ARC or a residential unit was really busy and they had lots of cases and they just wanted to get some information to us really fast. So say they wanted to tell us that 5 of their residents were really unwell and were being tested or whatever it is, they can populate this form and send that through to us immediately. They can tell us what the priority status of that is, whether they're requesting analysis or whether they just want us to know who they are. And if it comes up as urgent, then we'll just ask them to call us, obviously, and tell us over the phone. But this might just act as a way of having an update accessible to all people, so it's not just in one person's email inbox. And it might just be things like John Doe with the NHI, ABC 1234 is being tested or whatever. So the idea there is that they get sent out this each morning at 8 o'clock along with their residential symptom check as well. And if they needed to update us, like say at 8 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't usually able to complete the symptom check until midday, then we would know before then that these what people were tested or whatever, and vice versa. So if they'd already completed it, then they could send this through. So they don't actually need to complete this each day. It's just an extra option for them if they needed to update us quickly. So that's the idea behind that. And then what else do I need to show you? I need to show you. So up here you'll see that we've got the case and contact clearance, and it's numbered from 1 to 5. So the idea behind this thing is that once somebody was flagged in our operational report that they needed to be assessed to see if they're to be cleared. So this is for both cases and contacts, you could use it. But I think it's probably most important that we use it for cases. Well, we do need to use it for cases. So you would go through and you would go through and tick all the boxes. So have they been flagged in the operational report, which I'll show you in a moment, and have they met criteria to be released from quarantine? So no, then you're going to document why, and whether you've set a date to check this again. So say if they have a little something that you're not sure about or whatever, and then you're going to reevaluate it, say in 2 days time. But say they have met the clearance criteria, then we would say yes. What are the reasons that they've been cleared? In 10 days post onset plus 48 hours symptom free. And then you're going to confirm here that they have been cleared or not cleared. So it's really important that obviously this one is filled out when they do meet the criteria. So what will then happen is back in the person's initial form, so here we are back in the person's initial form again. It's going to, once you tick that that person has been cleared, it's going to change their survey status from active to inactive. And when you're changed to inactive, all of their symptom checks will be turned off. So if they were on daily symptom checks, if they were electronic or being telephoned each day by us, the reminders will be turned off, the invites will be turned off, and they'll no longer be symptom checked. Also, if this person's got household contacts, they're going to be linked back to by the keys that they've got. So we will be able to say that all the household contacts that are in that person's household contact group will then start to be on their 14 days of isolation. So that should all happen automatically, so no one should need to do it. So that's kind of the purpose behind that. I think that's everything in terms of the forms. So that's just kind of a general overview. Now we're going to get into the guts of what ops would like to do. So that's going to be looking at the case summaries. So this is just an example report that I've put together that could be useful to ops. So it's just some of the key indicators that you might want to look at and see what was going on with everyone. Okay, so yeah, so just a brief overview of everything that's going on, and I can show you how to make reports. So you should be able to, under your access, go in and create any reports that you want to. So you could go in and do another one with any other variables that we've got in here. It just means that you would need to know what variables you want to pull from, and if you just list them here, it'll be able to pull all the information from all the records that we've got in there. You just obviously need to pop through what forms you're using. So for here, it's set on scoping forms, so it'll only capture scoping forms that have been completed in cases that are currently into the scoping form. So that's all good. So if we just leave that for now. I've also done a contact tracing summary report, so it's just got a brief overview of their names, who are female, their age, ethnicity, NHI. If they're in a institution, so here this is that they've been in a workplace. If it's blank, it means that they're not in any of the identified institutions. The type of exposure that they've got, so this person's continuously exposed because they're a household contact worker, or they were maybe, they were just continually exposed. The date that they were last exposed, the suburb that they live in, if they're in any high-risk settings, so whether they were in a healthcare or aged care facility, their occupation, so we can see there if they've got for any of the high-risk categories, and if they're symptomatic, what date do their symptoms start, and are they still feeling them now? This here was again a specific one. If you remember back to when I showed you the contact tracing form, it asked for any outstanding actions. So here they will all come through. And then I've also just put there any underlying conditions, so if there's particularly high risk underlying conditions. So all of these fields can be edited very easily, and we can go in and change. So if you decide that actually underlying conditions is completely irrelevant to me, you can go in and you can remove it, so it won't show up anymore. Very easy to do. You can also export that as an Excel spreadsheet. So say if you're going to a review meeting and you just wanted to have a quick overview of all the cases or contacts that you had in there and you wanted to discuss them, you can export that all. And as I say again, you can create your own report. So you can go in and create a new report, give it a name, show what fields you want in there, and you can filter it so you can prioritize some. So under the old model, when we were doing symptom checking, we had one that told us who was on day 14 today, so that we could handle their discharge. So we could send them discharge text and check all through the paperwork, make sure everything was right. So that was just kind of used as an indicator for us. And we could also use it to identify who was symptomatic and symptomatic today. So we could do that as well in here. But we may not need to, because if I show you this now. Great, so this is what we're calling the REDCap COVID-19 operational report. And so this has quite a few functions. So one of them is just for general information. So it gives us an idea, if we're in this tab, of the workload that's projected. So which is created a report which will tell us, based on the person's date last exposed, how many people we might expect to have up until this date being monitored on REDCap. So obviously it's only test data, so it doesn't look as impressive as it might. So we've only got 2 people on here, but you get the idea. It gives you a few indicators, so how long it takes for people to be notified and then followed up and things like that. This tab here tells us who our new cases are. So at the moment it's actually showing us all of our cases, I think, because we haven't got very many in there, but it would prioritize those who were notified to us most recently. And it also gives you a link. So if I click on that, so he's got a link here to EpiServe, which is great. You obviously have to have access to EpiServe to be able to do that. It also gives you access to their NDCMS link. So this is not working at the moment because we've got it linked to NDCMS ACC, so not the production NDCMS, so that's fine. But once it's all up and running, you would be able to click on here and have access to the REDCap. The NDCMS link and the REDCap ID. So if you just wanted to have a quick look at all the new cases, you come here and you'd be able to look at all the different formats that we have for that person. Residential index cases is for people who are in prisons or aged residential care facilities. So that would give you an overview of them. So we've sort of separated them out because the workflow for them is quite different compared to our other index cases. Again, we've got our new contacts, so anybody who was recently uploaded a matter of contact can come up here. It would be the same idea. You would have it for the REDCap ID, any services, and episode link. And you'd be able to navigate through there for them. So in this way, you would be able to come up here and see whether scoping or contact tracing had been completed and whether it was outstanding and things like that. So it would kind of be used to tell us how far we were with our work for that day and what needs to be completed. It's also outstanding work. This one was just created to tell us if we have any high risk people in here, but we can actually do that probably better in REDCap. So yeah, we can use that as you want to. It tells you if we've got any duplicates, which we shouldn't have. And then symptom checking. So here we would be able to see whether their symptom check for today had been complete, and obviously again this prioritizes people from today, so the latest information. And you could tell which team it had been assigned to, if it was assigned to a case contact management team, what participant type they were, so if they were a contact or a case. Again, the NDC needs to be the REDCap ID. And then again, so if they have reported symptoms, we'll be able to see it here. Now here we haven't got any data, so there's nothing to show, but you'd be able to see again the REDCap ID, the case or contact, and then what symptoms they're showing today. So we can follow up on those if it were electronic symptom check, or we'd have visibility over it if it was a telephone symptom check over how many people were reporting symptoms. Again, here we've got the welfare request, so if somebody has identified that said yes to a question in either scoping, contact tracing, or their daily symptom check, and that request has been completed by a case and contact management person, then we can see here how that's being processed by the welfare team. So these are all mock data again, so obviously none of them have been completed, but yeah, we can have a look at that. So I think that is about all for today. It's just kind of a general overview for today. So hopefully you found that helpful. And yeah, any questions, Tamara and I are happy to help with anything that you need. We can help you create some reports to see what's going on, because that really is the key benefit out of it, is that we're able to see a lot more about what's going on. So with the cases and the context. So yeah, we really want to make it work as well as we can for you. And if there's anything else that you think maybe we could help out with, or any areas that you think maybe REDCap could cover, again, we're really happy to help out with that. So yeah, thank you very much.